For our 30th episode of Flippin' Friday, we're using a case that I didn't even order. We have a very easy to copy parts list, and we're making an almost $200 profit on this one. Let's get into it. Today's video is sponsored by GVG Mall, and you probably already know that I've been using them for so long to activate Windows on a ton of my own builds. They're actually running a huge sale right now, which boosts my normal 18% discount up to 25% off if you use code ZTT18, and I'll have that linked at the top of the description. They not only have Windows keys, but also a ton of other stuff such as Office, and even game keys for platforms like Steam, Origin, and Uplay, and they even have console stuff too, like PSN and Xbox prepaid cards as well. Activating Windows is super simple and only takes like 3 minutes total, so activate Windows today and remove that nasty watermark, and don't forget to use ZTT18 for 25% off. Just like our last episode of Flippin' Friday, the CPU we're going with is the Ryzen 5 3600, and honestly, I'm really liking this CPU as one of the top meta options for PC flipping here in early to mid 2023. You can easily find this any day of the week for 70 to 80 bucks, and that means you should be able to snipe it on a good deal for 50 or 60 if you're patient. That's some crazy price to performance for a 6-core and 12-threaded chip that's still relatively new, and the most important part is that the casual audience knows at this point that anything Ryzen 5 is a good option for them. If you do need an alternative though, feel free to go with the Ryzen 5 5600G if you want to spend a little more money to get a new part, and don't be afraid to use the 2600 for a bit cheaper because that can pair with some really solid GPUs as well. And for cooling the 3600 or any budget to mid-range Ryzen CPU you go with, this stock Wraith cooler is all you really need, and if you throw a custom spray paint job on there, that's even better. This is an easy way to boost the value of your PC without spending any extra money, if you already have the paint of course, and I love hacking my way to a higher quality build, or at least a better looking build without spending any extra money. Next up we get to the motherboard, and per usual, just go with any B450, B550, or A520 board that you can find a really good deal on. If you're buying a micro ATX case like I am, again, we'll talk about the nonsense of this case in just a bit, but make sure you go with the M version of the motherboard. The one I'm using today is the Gigabyte A520M Aorus Elite, which is actually a pretty good board for just the $64 that I paid off Amazon Warehouse, but don't try to copy this exact model. Go with whichever one you find a good deal on from places like Amazon Warehouse, Mercari, eBay, or of course Jawa.gg. Next up we have the RAM, and oh my goodness, did we ever find a good deal here. I actually posted about this over on the ZTT Deals channel, which is linked down below, a perfect resource for PC flippers by the way, and this is the Neo Forza Fe 2x8GB DDR4 kit that's clocked at 3600 megahertz. This ended up costing just $35 brand new from Newegg, and honestly I thought it might have been a little too good to be true at first. RAM prices are continuing to go down, but I didn't think they would go this low, so you'll love to see it. This deal isn't available anymore, but here's 3 more alternatives that you just can't go wrong with. And to finish off this motherboard installation, we have the SSD, and since we're officially out of those $25 NeTAC SSDs, here I went with the tried and true Team MP33 512GB NVMe drive that you can find brand new on Amazon any day of the week for 30 bucks. You absolutely don't need to spend more than $30 for a 500GB NVMe drive these days, but drives like the Crucial P3, which are a few bucks more, are worth it in my opinion, and I do like the Patriot P310 as another budget drive as well. Next up, we got to take care of this power supply, and here's another example of why you need to be following ZTT Deals. As you know, power supply deals have been few and far between lately, and it's easily the hardest component to shop for right now, at least here in the low budget world. This Thermaltake BM2 550 watt, which is a good tier C model, was on sale down to $45 on Newegg, and I actually bought 10 of them, and so did a lot of our Discord community members. Now, I did, however, run into a problem with this one, and because the BM2 is actually a tiny bit longer, it didn't look like it was going to actually fit inside our case. I couldn't remove the HDD bracket in the PSU basement, and I couldn't plug in the modular cables through the HDD bracket, so I had to bend a piece of the case so that I could get the power supply in there. Honestly, it wasn't a huge deal. I just bent it enough to initially get it in there, then I had enough room to plug in the cables, and it was all good. Can't forget to bend that piece back though, or the back panel won't reinstall. And of course, because of the aesthetics over everything mindset, we have to install some cable extensions in here, but if there was ever a build where you didn't install them, this would probably be the one. Here I'm attempting to install these Formula Mod extensions, which are always $20, but if you take a look at our case here, I'm definitely worried about these fitting inside. This is one of the many problems with our case option today, and at this point I honestly didn't know if I would be able to close that back panel or not with these installed. I did manage to squeeze them in here, but honestly I probably just wouldn't recommend following this at home because of this case. And speaking of which, this is the Gamemax Aero Mini, which on paper looked like a really solid ZTT Deals option for $65. It's the micro ATX form factor,
here, and it comes with 4 pre-installed ARGB fans, which sounds amazing, but I got a completely different product than what I was expecting. Aside from the virtually non-existent room for cable management, I actually didn't expect this interior to be white at all. If you look on the Newegg product page, you can see from these top pictures that the interior is 100% black or maybe gray, and everything looks normal. There's also no other color options available, so this is why I bought the case. If you scroll down though, all of these promo pictures down here showcase a white interior, and apparently I didn't make it this far down when selecting the case. Now don't get me wrong, I do kind of like this two-tone color design, but this is absolutely awful product placement and marketing, and this is why you got to keep your eyes peeled when dealing with some of these off-brand companies sometimes. I also don't like these huge holes up here at the front so you can see your mess of cable management in the back of the case, and these RGB fans are kind of a joke as well. I initially thought this blue and white color combination looked great, but you can see on some of these fans here that there's one single purple LED flashing through, and clearly that's just a misconfiguration of the RGB lights. Long story short, just don't buy this case, and here's some more reliable options that are also micro ATX and would work very well with a white and black build like this. And years later, after all of the power supply, extension, and case nonsense, it's finally time to install the GPU. Today I'm going with the Mingzhou RX 580, and if you've been watching my previous videos, this will not only make sense as to why I'm using it, but I'm sure you're probably also sick of seeing it at this point. I fully covered the whole AliExpress GPU debate up in this video here, but since I do have these GPUs in the studio, I'm gonna use them. This card actually looks super clean with the all black side profile, but feel free to go with any RX 580 8GB model that you can find for around 70 to 80 bucks. And just like that, here we have a completed system, and honestly, this is a very solid price to performance build for around $400. The Ryzen 5 3600 and RX 580 is a very solid combination for performance in general, but both parts are actually very well recognized even in the casual scene, so I think it would be pretty easy to sell a PC like this for around $600, maybe dropping down to $550 depending on your area and your patience level. Just remember that a white and black RGB build like this can sell for more money than a typical ugly 3600 and 580 build can, so that's why it's important to focus on aesthetics for flipping gaming PCs. And just so you can see what that Ryzen 5 3600 and RX 580 are capable of, Sam of course has us covered with a 20 game benchmarking one, and here are the results. Please continue to let us know what games you think we should be consistently benchmarking for these videos. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode of Flippin' Friday. Feel free to click the playlist that's on the screen now to catch up on all the other episodes, and I'll see you guys in the next video.